On the day two couples come to the orphanage to adopt, a row of comments suddenly appears before my eyes. Hurry, Nancy, make the first move. The couple who look like bumpkins is just pretending to be poor. The ones dressed nicely are actually poor. Call them mom and dad quickly. Do not let Nadia steal them away. In the next second, Nancy, who is standing beside me, suddenly rushes toward the country bumpkin couple. Nancy says, I'll gladly go to the countryside with you. I will leave the rich girl life to my sister. Everyone starts cheering in the comments. This is great. Nancy, our dear female lead, won't suffer anymore. Nadia, the evil villainess, will rot and stink for the rest of her life. Nancy will crush her under her foot. She will never have the chance or the right to meet the male lead. I am stunned. So Nancy can see the comments too. She is the female lead, while I am the villainess. But what she does not know is that I am reborn. In my previous life, the real wealthy family takes me away. I look at Nancy and smile coldly. Just wait, dear sister. Your good fortune is yet to come. We walk to the orphanage gates when my sister, Nancy Walker, or perhaps she should now be called Nancy Quill, saw the Maybach parked out front. Her eyes lit up. Her adoptive mother, Helen Bronson, took her hand and said, Nancy, our family isn't actually poor. We were just testing you earlier. We didn't expect you to be such a good kid who doesn't chase after money. From now on, you'll be our little princess. Nancy put on a pleasantly surprised expression. So that's how it is. Mom, Dad, I'll definitely be good to you and take care of you. Then she deliberately glanced at me and asked, Nadia, where's your family's car? Stephen Carlson and Linda Wells, my adoptive parents, fidgeted with their clothes, too embarrassed to say anything. I took the initiative to reach out and hold both their hands, smiling sweetly. I don't need a car or a big house. I just want Mom and Dad to be with me forever. That's enough. Damn, the villainess makes me laugh. I bet Nadia is dying of regret right now. Look at how pretentious she's being. The princess life only belongs to Nancy, the female lead. The villainess should just stay in her lane. Stephen and Linda were so moved by my words that they teared up. Meanwhile, Nancy just snorted. You're still so fake. I watched Nancy and the Quills drive off in the Maybach, a faint cold smile tugging at my lips. In my last life, at this exact moment, when Nancy found out the Quills were actually the real rich ones, she'd cried and thrown a tantrum. She'd begged to switch places with me, but no one had paid her any attention. So she'd taken all her resentment out on Stephen and Linda. They'd already been poor to begin with, and she squandered every last cent they had. They'd been so angry and heartbroken that they both collapsed and died. And on the day I graduated from college, Nancy had stabbed me 99 times. This time, she was the one going to that man-eating, soul-crushing place while I could finally live a quiet, ordinary life. I looked at Stephen's and Linda's honest, weathered faces. Mom, Dad, let's go home. I'm not afraid of hardship. We can walk back. Their pockets were painfully empty, but they couldn't bear to make me suffer. In the end, they still called a cab home. The moment we stepped through the door, the first thing I saw was a black and white memorial photo. Stephen and Linda immediately stepped in front of me to shield my view, gently comforting me. Nadia, don't be scared. This is your older brother. He passed away many years ago. I smiled and shook my head. I'm not scared. I knew they'd lost their son in middle age, and had only then decided to adopt a daughter. They patted my head, deeply moved. You're a wonderful child. Don't worry. Even if we're poor, we'll never let you go without. She'll never make anything of herself. Not when she's living in a dump like this. Nancy's bedroom and bathroom are both bigger than this whole crappy rental. The gap between them is insane. I took the place in with one sweeping glance. It was just a rundown rental apartment, but compared to the cold, beautiful prison that was the Quill residence, this place felt much cozier. At dinner, Stephen and Linda kept piling meat onto my plate. They couldn't bear to take any for themselves. At least someone's getting fed. Poor little Nancy isn't allowed to eat tonight, because she didn't get her etiquette lesson right. Oh, she nodded off in class and got caught. Now she's gonna lose breakfast too. I glanced at the barrage of comments flying before my eyes, feeling like my food tasted even better than before. After the meal, Stephen said a little awkwardly, Nadia, I'm sorry that you're going to suffer with us. We were selfish for pretending to be rich. We wanted to adopt a daughter to care for us in our old age. Linda pulled out a bank card. This is for you. It has every cent we've saved up over the years. Consider it our way of making it up to you. What a joke. Your life savings can't even compare to Nancy's monthly allowance. Mrs. Quill gave Nancy $500,000 as pocket money without even batting an eye. I pushed the bank card back to them. Mom, Dad, you should keep this. Don't worry about me. I'll study hard, make a ton of money, and give you both a great life. Stephen and Linda were so overwhelmed that they couldn't even speak. They just kept stroking my head, praising me for being thoughtful and sensible. The heavens had given me a second chance at life. I'd escaped the Quill family's gilded cage and met such kind adoptive parents. There was no way I was going to repeat the same mistakes. I was going to use everything I'd learned in my last life to change my family's fate, and everyone who had hurt us would pay the price they deserved. Right then, the comments flooded the space before me. Oh my God, the male lead, Eugene Lloyd, just showed up. He and Nancy are finally meeting. Look at how shy Nancy is right now. They're such a perfect match. They're totally made for each other. The corner of my lips lifted. So Eugene was the male lead. Perfect. I would make good use of him. When the admission notice from a top-ranked high school arrived at our doorstep, Stephen and Linda were so excited that their voices trembled. Nadia, it really is from that prestigious high school, and you ranked first. You're amazing. In my last life, I'd received an elite education in the Quill family. Getting first place in the entrance exam for a prestigious high school was nothing to me. Stephen and Linda were so happy that they took me into town and bought me several new outfits, grinning from ear to ear. Whatever other kids have, our daughter has to have too. The comments went wild again. What? Why does Nadia get to attend a prestigious high school? And as the top scorer, no less. That means she and Eugene will be in the same class. Nancy had to pull strings just to get in, and her parents beat her over it. Hang in there, Nancy. Your parents are just hitting you for your own good. They want you to be ambitious and driven. This is how elite education in powerful families works. With great power comes great responsibility after all. You'll be fine once you get past this. As I watched the comments roll by, I could practically picture the kind of life Nancy was enduring in the Quill household right now. I'd had more than enough of that life in my last one. This time around, I would let Nancy get a proper experience of that hell. On the first day of school, Nancy spotted me as soon as I stepped into the classroom. She was draped in luxury brands from head to toe, but it couldn't hide how pale she looked. She looked down at me from her high horse, her voice dripping with contempt when she spoke. Well, if it isn't Nadia Walker. Oh wait, you're Nadia Carlson now. I really didn't expect this, you know. You sure are lucky. Even after being adopted by that poor couple, they were even willing to grovel and beg, so you could get into this high school? At her words, the classmates around us started whispering among themselves, so her top score is fake? I saw her marks and thought she was some kind of genius. I was actually planning to ask her for tips, but it turns out this is what she's actually like. Gross. Let's just stay away from her from now on. Nancy's smile grew even smugger when she saw that she'd gotten exactly what she wanted. Nancy really is smart. It's only the first day of school, yet she's already managed to get the whole class to ostracize Nadia. Nadia just got insanely lucky. Why should she be allowed to outshine Nancy? Nancy leaned in close to me and hissed, "Blame yourself for having bad luck. Look at you. Every inch of you screams poor. You're not like me. My walk-in closet is full of designer labels. Something you'll never have in this life or the next." I lifted my gaze and saw Eugene standing not far away, looking at me with thinly veiled disdain. I smirked coldly, unbothered by his attitude. It wouldn't be long before he came looking for me on his own. From that day on, the whole class teamed up to freeze me out. I didn't have the time or energy to care about their childish games though. I only had one clear goal. To do whatever it took to make sure my family lived a good life. Soon, the results for our first monthly exam came out. I ranked first in the entire grade, scoring over 30 points higher than the student in second place, Eugene. Meanwhile, Nancy was dead last. Her score wasn't even on par with an average student from a regular class. In an instant, The way everyone looked at me completely changed. Nadia is insane. She actually scored 30 points higher than Eugene. How is she so good? Didn't Nancy say she only got into the honors class through connections? There's no way you can fake exam results though, right? This score has to be real. Nancy glared at me, her eyes full of venom. Don't think I don't know what you did. For me, they were potential stepping stones and useful connections. Seeing this, Nancy was so furious that I could almost hear her teeth grinding. After I got home, Stephen and Linda were so excited when they saw that I'd come in first that they teared up. Linda pulled me into her arms. Her voice choked. I'm so proud of you, my darling. I'm preparing a feast tonight. I'll cook your favorite dish. Stephen grinned and asked Nadia, what do you want as a reward? I'll buy it for you. Whatever it is, I'll make it happen. I smiled and shook my head. I don't want anything. I just want you both to stay by my side and be okay. After dinner, I chatted with them for a bit before getting ready for bed. Just as I was about to close my eyes, the barrage of comments in front of me started up again, all full of pity. Poor Nancy is so miserable. Her parents beat her so badly. Hang in there, Nancy. Your parents are doing it for your own good. You just messed up this time. You'll do better on the next exam. Poor thing. She already has a broken leg. Yet her parents are forcing her to stay awake and study because her hands aren't injured. You can do this, okay? We're here with you. This was the affluent, wealthy family Nancy was so desperate to join. Was she satisfied now? The next day, Nancy showed up on crutches, wearing a mask and sunglasses. It looked like her face had been beaten so badly that she couldn't show it in public. After school, Eugene stopped me the second I stepped out of the classroom. He said calmly, I looked at your test paper. Your way of solving the problems is different from ours. I know your family's poor, so I'll pay you by the hour if you come to my place and study with me. I didn't act shy about it and said bluntly, sure, $2 million for the semester. Eugene froze for a second, then let out a short laugh. Do you even know how much 2 million is? You've got some nerve asking for that much right off the bat. I gave him a sideways glance and turned to leave. He immediately stepped in front of me again. Fine, give me your bank account details. I nodded and headed straight for his family's car. Let's go. We'll start today. I won't take advantage of you. The comments instantly exploded. Nancy, where are you? Nadia is about to steal Eugene from you. Why would he go to Nadia in the first place? She's totally scamming him. She's got no real skills at all. Nadia's obviously doing it on purpose. She just wants to steal Nancy's guy. She's disgusting. Right then, Nancy rushed over and grabbed Eugene's arm. Eugene, how can you take Nadia back to your house? We're the ones who should be studying together. Her grades are fake. He shook her off, looking annoyed. You came in dead last. What makes you think you're qualified to study with me? Nancy already had a broken leg from the beating her parents had given her. At his words, she was so furious that she could barely stay standing. Still, all she could do was watch as I got into the Lloyd family's car and rode off. When we sat down at his desk to start studying, Eugene transferred $2 million to me. I wasn't stingy about my knowledge at all. I laid everything I knew out for him. A few hours later, Eugene was singing my praises. You're honestly the smartest person I've ever met, Nadia. You can come over all throughout high school if you want. The price is your call. I smiled and nodded. With that kind of money, of course I wasn't going to say no. We studied until 9 p.m. I was just about to head home when the comments started coming through in a panicked frenzy. Help. Someone. Help her. Nancy's about to get beaten to death. This is all Nadia's fault. Nancy's parents are mad at her because she can't get close to Eugene and his family. They think she's useless and want to beat her to death so they can adopt Nadia instead. They're monsters. Eugene. Go next. Eugene's expression changed instantly. What did you just say? I looked at the comments flashing wildly before my eyes. Nancy's covered in blood. The Quills locked the doors. They're saying if she can't win over the Lloyd family, she's worthless. Hurry. Without hesitation, I grabbed Eugene's sleeve. Take me to the Quill residence. Now. For the first time, he saw genuine urgency on my face. The drive there was terrifyingly quiet. When the gates finally opened, We heard the screaming before we even stepped inside. Mrs. Quill was shrieking hysterically. You useless thing. We spent millions raising you and you can't even compare to a poor orphan. Mr. Quill held a golf club in his hand. Nancy lay curled on the floor, trembling violently. Blood stained her sleeve. The comments exploded. Oh my God. They've gone insane. Save her. This isn't supposed to happen. The moment Eugene walked in, the entire room froze. Mr. Quill's expression changed instantly. Young Master Lloyd. Eugene looked at the golf club in his hand, then at Nancy on the floor. His face went ice cold. You call this education? Mrs. Quill hurriedly forced out a smile. You misunderstand. We were only disciplining her a little. A little? Eugene cut her off sharply. Another hit and she would have needed a hospital. Nancy immediately burst into tears the second she saw him. Eugene, she sobbed weakly. It hurts. In my previous life, this was how Nancy survived everything. Cry. Pretend to be fragile. Make others pity her. And Eugene had always fallen for it. Sure enough, his expression softened slightly. The comments immediately flooded with relief. Thank God. The male lead still cares about Nancy. They're destined after all. Nadia loses again. But then Eugene turned toward me instead. Nadia, he said quietly, call an ambulance. The room fell silent. Even Nancy's crying stopped. I calmly took out my phone and dialed. Meanwhile, Eugene looked back at the Quills with disgust. You adopted a child, not a tool. Mrs. Quill panicked. Young Master Lloyd, please don't misunderstand. Nancy is just too rebellious. We only wanted her to improve. She ranked last because she's stupid, Eugene said flatly. What does that have to do with Nadia? Nancy's face turned deathly pale. The comments exploded again. What? Why is the male lead defending Nadia? This plot is wrong. Something's changing. I lowered my eyes slightly to hide my smile. Of course things were changing. In my previous life, Eugene had fallen in love with me first. Back then, I'd been trapped inside the Quill family and forced to play the perfect rich daughter every second of every day. Eugene was the only person who'd ever noticed how exhausted I was. Nancy found out. Then she stole him from me, just like she stole everything else. But this life was different. This time, I had no intention of loving Eugene. I only intended to use him. The ambulance arrived quickly. As the paramedics lifted Nancy onto the stretcher, she suddenly grabbed Eugene's sleeve desperately. Eugene, can you come with me? Her eyes were red and pitiful behind the tears. The comments instantly started screaming again. Say yes. Please. She only has you now. Eugene frowned slightly. Before he could answer, I spoke calmly. Your parents are watching. Nancy stiffened instantly. Mr. and Mrs. Quill's expressions darkened at once. They had only stopped pretending because Eugene was here. The second he left, Nancy's nightmare would continue. Nancy clearly realized this too. Her fingers slowly loosened from Eugene's sleeve. For the first time since her rebirth, panic truly appeared in her eyes. Because she finally understood something. The comments couldn't save her. Being the female lead couldn't save her either. She had personally chosen this life. After the ambulance left, Eugene drove me home himself. On the way, he suddenly asked, were the Quills always like this? I looked out the window quietly. They care more about pride than people. He was silent for a long time. Then he said softly, your parents are better. For a moment, warmth flickered through my chest. Stephen and Linda had nothing. No money. No status. No power. Yet they had given me something the Quills never could. Love without conditions. When we arrived home, the lights in the small apartment were still on. Stephen had fallen asleep on the sofa waiting for me. Linda immediately rushed over anxiously. Nadia, why are you home so late? Did something happen? I smiled softly. Nothing happened. Behind me, Eugene looked at the cramped apartment. Then he looked at the exhausted couple who only cared whether I had eaten dinner. Something unreadable flashed across his eyes. The comments grew strangely quiet. Finally, one line slowly floated past. Why does this family actually feel warmer than Nancy's? The moment that comment appeared, the barrage seemed to freeze for a second. Then chaos erupted. What nonsense are you people saying? The Quills are wealthy elites. How can a poor family compare? Love doesn't pay the bills. But Nancy looks miserable every single day now. Nadia's parents genuinely care about her though. I looked away calmly and closed the door behind me. Eugene stood outside for a few seconds longer before finally saying, "Good night." After he left, Linda immediately pulled me to the dinner table. "You haven't eaten properly, have you? I kept soup warm for you." Stephen rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. I wanted to wait up too, but I accidentally fell asleep. My chest tightened slightly. In my last life, whenever I came home late, the Quills would only ask whether I'd embarrassed the family. No one had ever waited for me with warm soup. I lowered my head and quietly took a sip. It tasted salty. Only then did I realize tears had fallen into the bowl. Linda panicked instantly. "Nadia? What's wrong?" I shook my head quickly and forced a smile. "It's just really good." The comments suddenly became much quieter. Why do I feel bad all of a sudden? Nadia never cried in front of the Quills. Wait. Was the villainess actually treated badly too? I ignored them and finished dinner obediently. The next morning, the entire school had already heard about what happened at the Quill residence. Rumors spread wildly through the halls. They say Nancy got beaten so badly she was hospitalized. The Quills are terrifying. I heard Eugene personally called the ambulance. Didn't Nancy always brag about how perfect her family was? When Nancy finally returned to school 3 days later, she looked even thinner than before. Her long sleeves covered the bruises on her wrists. The moment she saw me, hatred practically poured out of her eyes. "You did that on purpose." I calmly flipped a page in my notebook. "Did what?" "You knew they'd beat me." Her voice trembled. "You knew what kind of people they were." I finally looked up at her. "And whose fault is that?" Nancy froze. Because she knew. In this life, I had never once fought her for the Quills. She had sprinted toward them herself. The comments immediately turned defensive again. So what if Nancy made a mistake? She only wanted a better life. Nadia's still too cold. Exactly. Nancy's suffering this much already. Nancy seemed to regain confidence from those comments. She gritted her teeth. "Don't get smug, Nadia. No matter what, I'm still the Quill's daughter now. You're just some poor girl living in a broken apartment." I smiled faintly. "Really?" Before she could respond, the classroom suddenly fell silent. A teacher walked in carrying a stack of competition registration forms. "This year's international academic competition team has been finalized," he announced excitedly. Everyone instantly sat up straight. That competition was famous nationwide. Winning it practically guaranteed admission into the country's top universities. The teacher smiled broadly. "First place in the grade, Nadia Carlson, has been selected as team captain." The room exploded instantly. "Nadia's the captain? That's insane. She's only a first-year student." Nancy's expression twisted violently. The teacher continued, "Second place, Eugene Lloyd." Eugene walked in right then, his gaze landing on me almost immediately. The comments started screaming again. "No, the male lead and villainess are spending even more time together. What is the plot doing?" Meanwhile, Eugene walked directly to my desk and placed a thick stack of notes down in front of me. "I organized last year's competition questions," he said naturally. "We can study together after school." The classroom instantly fell dead silent. Nancy's face turned white. Because everyone knew. Eugene had never studied with anyone before. Ever. The comments completely lost their minds. The male lead is falling for the villainess. This is impossible. What about Nancy? I slowly looked up at Eugene. And for the first time since my rebirth, I hesitated. Because in my previous life, Eugene had once stood in front of me exactly like this too. Back then, I'd believed someone would finally choose me. Until Nancy ruined it. Eugene lowered his voice slightly. "What's wrong?" I looked at him for a long moment before smiling lightly. "Nothing. This time, I wouldn't believe in love so easily again." From that day on, Eugene started appearing beside me more and more often. He waited for me after class, saved seats for me in lectures. Even the teachers began pairing us together by default during academic discussions. The comments practically exploded every single day. The male lead is completely crooked now. Nancy is about to cry herself to death. How did the villainess steal her storyline? Meanwhile, Nancy's situation at the Quill residence only got worse. The Quills had originally adopted her because they wanted a perfectly obedient socialite daughter. But Nancy had grown up in the orphanage. She'd never learned piano, etiquette, horseback riding, wine tasting, or foreign languages. No matter how hard the tutors drilled her, she couldn't catch up to years of elite education. And every failure earned her another beating. One afternoon, while I was organizing competition materials in the library, the comments suddenly began flashing frantically again. Nancy fainted. She's running a fever and still being forced to memorize business etiquette. The Quills are insane. I paused slightly, then calmly turned another page. Across from me, Eugene watched me quietly. You know, he said suddenly. Most people would pretend to care. I didn't even look up. Do you want me to cry for her? She's your sister. I let out a faint laugh. In my previous, I stopped myself smoothly. In the past, she never treated me like one. Eugene studied me silently. The library sunlight fell across his face, softening his usually cold features. You've changed a lot, he murmured. My fingertips paused briefly. Of course I had. A person who had died once would never remain the same. Right then, someone suddenly shoved the library doors open. Nancy stumbled inside. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. The moment she saw Eugene sitting beside me, her eyes turned red instantly. Eugene, she whispered. He frowned slightly. Why are you here? The comments instantly flooded the screen. She came to find him. Please comfort her. She's suffering so much. Nancy looked absolutely miserable. Her wrists were covered in bruises she hadn't managed to hide properly beneath her sleeves. But the moment she noticed Eugene staring at them, she immediately lowered her arms. Just like before. Always showing weakness at the perfect moment. Her voice shook softly. I just wanted to ask you a question about class. Eugene's expression softened slightly. The comments instantly celebrated. Yes, that's right. The male lead still cares about her. But before he could speak, Nancy suddenly swayed, then collapsed directly toward Eugene. He instinctively reached out to catch her. The comments erupted. There it is. Classic heroine moment. They're finally reconnecting. Nancy clung weakly to his sleeve, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm so tired, she whispered brokenly. Eugene frowned. Have the Quills been hurting you again? Nancy bit her lips silently. That silence alone was enough to make anyone pity her. The comments were already cursing the Quills to death. But I simply closed my notebook calmly. Then I stood. I'll leave first. Nancy's eyes flashed triumphantly for a split second. She thought she'd won again. Just like in my previous life. Back then, she had always used this exact method to steal everything from me little by little. But before I could walk away, Eugene suddenly grabbed my wrist. Wait. Both Nancy and I froze. Eugene looked at me instead of her. You're leaving. I glanced down at his hand. In my last life, he had once held my hand like this too, only to let go in the end. Slowly, I pulled my wrist free. You should take care of Nancy first, I said lightly. For some reason, Eugene's brows furrowed even tighter. Nadia. Before he could finish speaking, Nancy suddenly let out a painful gasp. Eugene's attention immediately shifted back to her. I watched silently for 2 seconds, then turned and left without another word. The comments instantly became smug again. See? The male lead still chooses Nancy in the end. Some things can't be changed. The heroine is still the heroine. I walked down the empty hallway alone. My expression remained calm, but my fingers slowly tightened around the strap of my bag. Because the comments were right about one thing. Some things really were difficult to change. For example, no matter how many times I reminded myself not to care, a tiny part of me still felt disappointed. That night, I sat alone at my desk long after Stephen and Linda had gone to sleep. The comments kept drifting past my eyes. Poor Nadia. She was abandoned again. The heroine always wins in the end. I stared at them quietly for a long time, then suddenly laughed. Abandoned? No. This time, I had never handed my heart to anyone to begin with. In my previous life, I desperately wanted someone to choose me. The Quills hadn't. Nancy hadn't. And in the end, Eugene hadn't either. So after dying once, I finally learned something. The only person who could truly save me was myself. The next morning, I submitted my transfer application for an overseas exchange program. When the teacher announced it in class, everyone was stunned. Nadia's leaving? She got accepted into that international academy? That school only takes geniuses. Even Eugene froze. After class, he cornered me outside the school gates. You're going abroad? Yes. When were you going to tell me? I looked at him calmly. Do I need to? His jaw tightened slightly. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked quietly, Are you leaving because of yesterday? I almost laughed. Back then, in my previous life, I would have waited desperately for him to explain himself. But now? It no longer mattered. I'm leaving because I have bigger goals than staying here, I said evenly. His eyes darkened slightly. And me. The comments instantly exploded. Oh my God. He finally realized. Say it, Eugene. But I only smiled faintly. You'll survive. For the first time, Eugene looked genuinely shaken. Meanwhile, a short distance away, Nancy stood hidden behind a tree, silently watching everything. She looked thinner than ever. The arrogance she once carried had completely disappeared. The Quills stood beside her, their expressions ugly. After Eugene's growing closeness to me became obvious, they had started regretting their choice. They wanted me back now. Unfortunately for them, it was too late. Mrs. Quill forced a stiff smile and approached me. Nadia, no matter what, we raised you before. If you're willing, you can still come back home. Stephen suddenly stepped in front of me. For once, the gentleman's voice turned cold. She already has a home. Linda held my hand tightly beside him. The comments went silent. Completely silent. I looked at the couple standing protectively in front of me, and felt warmth spread slowly through my chest. This was what family looked like. Not wealth. Not status. Not control. Love. Real love. Nancy stared at us blankly. Then, for the first time since her rebirth, tears truly fell from her eyes. Not manipulative tears. Not fake weakness. Just regret. Because she finally understood. The thing she threw away so eagerly was the only real happiness she could have had. A week later, I left the country. Stephen and Linda cried all the way to the airport, stuffing my luggage with food and extra clothes even though I barely had space left. Eugene came too. He stood silently beside me until the final boarding call sounded. Then he suddenly said, If things had been different. I smiled lightly, but they weren't. He looked at me for a very long time, then finally nodded. You're right. As I turned and walked toward the boarding gate, the comments appeared one last time. The villainess didn't steal anything. She just chose herself. Maybe she was never the villain at all. I looked ahead and kept walking. This time, I wasn't anyone's supporting character. I was finally the main character of my own life.